Today's lesson is the sweetness that never sours. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike.
I'm Roger, and today we're going to talk about something that is sweet. If something has sweet taste to it, it has sweetness. And this is a sweetness that never sours or never goes sour. I wonder what that is.
Yeah, it's a very interesting title. Makes you think of all sorts of things. I mean, sugar never really goes sour, but it certainly can change in its flavor as it ages. So this is a sweetness or something sweet, as Roger said, that never sours, that never becomes sour, like a lemon is sour, of course. But as you mentioned, Roger, when something sours, it also just goes bad. We can use this for non-food related things. Oh, did you hear about Brian and Jenna? Oh, their relationship has gone sour. They're breaking up. They're fighting all the time. Something bad happened. So this is a sweetness that never goes bad, that is always good and sweet. I assume we're talking about a food here, but we're going to have to get into our article to find out exactly what it is. Sounds pretty special, though, so let's check it out. The sweetness that never sours.
Spread on toast, poured over porridge, or enjoyed straight from the jar, honey is truly one of nature's sweetest gifts. But beyond its rich flavor, honey has another amazing quality. It almost never goes bad.
Okay, so here in the first paragraph, of course, we're talking about this thing that is so sweet. It's spread on toast, it's poured over porridge, or it's enjoyed straight from the jar. Well, honey is truly one of nature's sweetest gifts.
Oh, honey.
So this is how we introduce this topic to you. It can be spread on toast, which means bread that has been toasted in a toaster. That can be quite tasty. I remember having that when I was a kid. You'd put butter on toast, and then you'd put honey on top of that. It was oh so tasty. That was honey toast, as we called it in my family. It could also be poured over porridge, which I think is something people would eat here. Porridge is a word that is often used in fairy tales, like Goldilocks had some porridge or something like that. Most people don't really eat porridge, although that is the word we translate for siphon sometimes, porridge. So you could pour honey over your porridge, or you could just enjoy it straight from the jar with one of those little spoons or whatever. And no matter how you enjoy it, honey is really nature's sweetest gift.
So there's lots of ways to enjoy your honey. I think most of us as kids, yes, might experience it on toast or maybe on porridge or breakfast cereal. Porridge is kind of a warm, wet version of dry breakfast cereal. Or just eat it from the jar. I'm not sure I've ever done that, but I'm thinking of Winnie the Pooh with his head or his hand stuck in the honey jar as he licks it off his hands and fingers. But honey truly is one of nature's sweetest gifts. And I would say, yeah, for a lot of young people, a lot of kids, one of their first favorite foods, right? Along with ice cream. A lot of young kids love sweet things, and honey is certainly one of the best, easiest, and most natural. And then it says, this is where it gets really interesting, but beyond its rich flavor, honey has another amazing quality. It almost never goes bad. That is absolutely astonishing. So if we go beyond, if we look past what we know about honey, oh, it's golden, it's sweet, you put it on toast, it tastes good, you can use it as a replacement for sugar and other things in recipes. So go beyond that. It has this amazing quality. There is something very special about honey that is not true about maple syrup or sugar or other sweet things. It almost never goes bad. It almost never rots. It almost never has mold growing on it. Have you ever opened a jar of honey? Smell that. We got to throw that away. That honey's gone bad. No, it almost never goes bad. It's actually pretty incredible. There's a food that can last for years, decades, and maybe even, I think, centuries, and it's still sweet honey. So it's absolutely one of the toughest foods out there, and we're going to find out what exactly is going on to make honey so special and unusual in the next paragraph. So let's check it out.
Most foods spoil because of bacteria and mold. These tiny organisms are often present in small, harmless amounts. However, under the right conditions, they can multiply quickly, growing particularly well in environments with plenty of moisture and oxygen. Honey is made by bees from flower nectar, which is high in water and therefore prone to spoiling. To prevent this, once it's in the hive, bees fan the nectar with their wings, evaporating much of the moisture. By the time the process is complete, the water content has dropped from around 80% to just 15%.
大家好， 第二部分介绍名词 organism， 意思是生物体或是有机体，尤其是指微生物的意思。例如Even a single drop of pond water can be full of life, containing thousands of tiny organisms. 即使一滴池塘的水都可能充满生命，包含数以千计的微小生物。或者 Many organisms are too small to be seen without a microscope. 许多生物体的体型太小，得用显微镜才看得到。下一个看到名词 oxygen， 表示氧或是氧气。例如Firemen typically use oxygen masks to breathe safely when entering a smoke-filled building. 消防员在进入烟雾弥漫的建筑物时，通常会使用氧气面罩来安全呼吸。或是 Trees are important to our planet because they produce oxygen. 树木因为会制造氧气，所以对我们的星球很重要。接下来看到名词 hive， 意思是蜂巢或是蜂箱。例如The bees buzzed around their hive,working together to produce honey. 蜜蜂在蜂巢附近嗡嗡作响，一同努力生产蜂蜜。再看一个例句 The average hive can produce around 25 kilograms of honey. 一个蜂巢平均可以生产大约25公斤的蜂蜜。继续看到动词 evaporate， 意思是使蒸发或是挥发。例如 Water will evaporate quickly under high heat. 水在高温下会迅速蒸发。也可以说Kathy watched as the water began to boil and evaporate into steam. Kathy 看着水开始沸腾并蒸发成蒸汽。再来介绍名词 content， 表示含量或是成分。例如 This juice has a high sugar content, so it's not suitable for those on a diet. 这款果汁的含糖量很高，因此不适合控制饮食的人。又或者说 The fat content of each dish is listed on the right side of the menu.每道菜的脂肪含量都列在菜单右边。
Okay, now we're ready to talk about part 2. It says, most foods spoil because of bacteria and mold. Okay, so bacteria, of course, are like germs. They spread disease and things like that. Bacteria are different from viruses. They're different, and you have to do some research with a biologist to figure out exactly what the difference is. But bacteria, of course, can spoil food. And, of course, we also have mold, which I think kind of float through the air or something like that. Then they stick to food, and if the food sits there for too long, the mold starts to multiply, and then it looks like this kind of little fur, this little white fur that's growing on your food, and you see that and you go, ugh, I'm not going to eat that because it is moldy now. I think mold also is kind of green in color.
It can be green. It can grow in your bread. It can grow in your meat and make your meat smell bad. So, of course, you shouldn't eat that. And moldy bread, yeah, it's probably been sitting around for a few days, and it starts to grow this stuff on it. And yes, it can be bad for you, and it's just unappetizing, but I think it can also very much make you sick. If it's got mold on it, I throw it away. But honey has never had this. It doesn't have that problem. What is going on? It says these tiny organisms, things like bacteria and mold, are often present in small, harmless amounts. So, of course, this happens on food. This is something that is around us all the time. As Roger said, mold, bacteria, they can float through the air. They can be on surfaces. We wash our hands to avoid the worst of them, but if there's a bit of bacteria on your hands and you eat something, it won't kill you. It probably won't even make you sick because your body will fight off any problems. And we should also mention some bacteria are good, right? When people eat yogurt or kimchi, they're getting good bacteria in their stomach, which can help to keep you healthy and help you digest. But certain bacteria, of course, can make you sick and make your food rather nasty and unappetizing. And we're talking about them as organisms because that's what they are. An organism is a living thing. We are organisms. A tree is an organism. A blue whale is a really, really big organism. A bacteria is a really, really small organism because these are living things. And that's why we're describing them as tiny. So they are often present. They are often there in small, harmless amounts, and that's okay. But when they start to grow out of control, when there's too much, that's when food gets nasty and people can get sick.
Right. So, of course, if you leave food out too long, that's the kind of condition where mold can grow. So, however, it says under the right conditions, maybe it's its temperature or with time or whatever, they can multiply quickly, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, etc. They just multiply and become larger numbers. And they grow particularly well in environments with plenty of moisture and oxygen. So these, of course, are some good conditions for mold and bacteria to grow. They grow in environments with lots of moisture. That means a lot of water present, humidity, moisture, or whatever, and with a lot of oxygen. That, of course, is very important to life. I think it's one of the elements on the periodic table. I think its atomic number is 8. We all need oxygen to breathe in order to live. But if there's a lot of oxygen present in a particular environment, that means the bacteria or the mold could grow rather quickly.
Exactly right. And that's, of course, why we wrap things up, why we put things in bags or boxes, put them in the fridge. That controls the moisture and the oxygen that gets to the food, allowing the food to be fresh for longer. Honey, though, is its own special thing. It says honey is made by bees from flower nectar, which is high in water and therefore prone to spoiling. So it seems to have many of the disadvantages of other food, a lot of water in there, and that can create bacteria and mold and things, but something happens. We'll find out in a second. But where does honey come from? A lot of people know honey is from bees. How do bees actually make honey? Well, they go around from flower to flower collecting, nectar. What is nectar? It's a sugary fluid that is naturally created by plants. It's kind of a sugar water. And it's within the flowers. It encourages insects and birds and other animals to go near the flower. And as they're drinking or eating the nectar, this sweet water that the plant creates, they also pick up pollen, which are kind of sort of like little flower seeds. So as the bee or the butterfly or the hummingbird enjoys this nectar, it's picking up the pollen, and as it flies from flower to flower, it's mixing those pollens or dropping them in places, allowing the flowers to reproduce themselves. Now, this nectar, though, while it's very sweet and very nourishing for these little animals, it has a lot of water in it, right? A lot of them use sort of a straw-like mouth structure to kind of suck it up, to drink this nectar. And so with this water, it makes it prone to spoiling. If something is prone to something, it is likely to do that. And we often use it kind of to describe a weakness in something. So if you have some kind of disease, you might be prone to catching other things, right? That's why we have to be careful around people who may be suffering from cancer, because they might be prone to getting colds and flus that could really infect their lungs and make their health in much greater danger than if someone is healthy. So if you're prone to something, you have a weakness for that thing, a weakness that could lead to greater problems.
Right. When I was younger, I was prone to getting migraine headaches, but I don't seem to get them anymore.
Well, that's good.
But yes, you have a tendency to spoil. The nectar, I suppose, could spoil because it's high in water, so it could spoil. It's prone to spoiling. And to prevent this, or to stop this from happening, once it's in the hive, bees fan the nectar with their wings, evaporating much of the moisture. So first of all, we need to talk about where bees live. They live in a hive. It's quite big. It's got that honeycomb pattern inside of it, and they spend a lot of time making the hive. And, of course, they make the honey inside the hive, and they live in there, and the queen bee is in there. The workers and the drones and stuff are all there in the hive. And when the nectar is there, they fan the nectar first with their wings. Okay, so bees do have wings, and if you fan something as a verb, you just kind of wave something back and forth so that cold air, or at least air, goes across that thing. So, of course, people fan themselves during the summer when it's too hot on the bus or something like that. You might carry a newspaper with you or a fan or something like that, and you fan yourself. So here they fan the nectar with their wings, buzz, 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 and then, of course, it causes all that water to go away. It evaporates much of the moisture. So here the verb to evaporate just means a liquid turns into a gas. You notice this, of course, on summer days when it rains and the rain stops, if there are puddles on the streets or there's water everywhere. It doesn't take very long for all that moisture to evaporate into the air and things are dry again.
By the time the process is complete, the water content has dropped from around 80 80% to just 15%. So they're basically drying out this nectar and turning it from sort of a sugary water to more of a sugar because the water has mostly evaporated or disappeared. And once they finish, the water content or the percentage of water in the nectar has dropped from around 80% to just 15%. When we use content, that's the amount of something in somewhere. What does this box contain? The contents of this box is 12 cans of soda or something like that. So how much it contains. When we're talking about sort of large masses of things, this is often expressed as a percentage. So when you see the humidity of the day, it's 45% humidity. That's sort of like the water content of the air, and the higher the air, the sort of thicker and stickier and wetter the air is. Here they're doing the opposite. They're drying the air out. They're going from 80 down to 15%. So most of the water has disappeared, leaving largely the natural sugars left behind in that nectar. And it's at this point that humans start to get involved, and let's see how we turn that nectar into delicious honey. We're going to do that in the next paragraph.
Humans also help preserve honey by storing it in tightly sealed jars that limit its contact with oxygen. The combination of low moisture and little air creates an environment where bacteria and mold struggle to survive. The result is that a properly stored jar of honey can stay safe and delicious for years, which makes honey one of the world's longest-lasting natural treats.
第三部分看到动词 preserve 这个单字的意思是保存。例如 Canning methods can be used to preserve fruits and vegetables for the winter. 灌装方法可以用于保存水果和蔬菜，以备冬季使用。最后看到名词 combination 指结合、混合。可以说 The combination of exercise and a healthy diet can improve your health. 运动和健康饮食的结合可以改善你的健康。也可以说Friday's concert will feature a unique combination of classical and electronic music. 周五的音乐会将以古典音乐和电子音乐的独特结合作为特色。
Okay, it's time for us to talk about the third and final paragraph for today. So now we have humans that are coming in, and humans, or people, also help preserve honey by storing it in tightly sealed jars that limit its contact with oxygen. Okay, so of course people raise bees in order to produce the honey, and they of course bottle it, they put it in jars, and then they try to sell it. There are lots of people here in Taiwan who do that. I think you can buy honey at those big hypermarts or whatever. There are people there who sell honey there. And of course, I think if you buy honey, you need to know the difference between processed honey and raw honey. I think raw honey is one that has not been heated, so it's better for you. So yeah, talk to them about that. But in any case, if you want to make something last a long time, you preserve it. So humans help preserve honey by storing it in a special way. So again, to preserve something just means to try to keep something in its original condition for as long as possible. And they do this by putting the honey in tightly sealed jars. That's like a small glass container, and they don't let a lot of air go in there. They limit the contact with oxygen. So yeah, they store them in the jars with as little air in them as possible.
And then it says the combination of low moisture and little air creates an environment where bacteria and mold struggle to survive. This is sort of the basics of keeping food fresh for longer. You want to avoid water or moisture, right? Because that can create bacteria, which can rot the food. So if you have a combination, if you combine, which would be the verb form of combination, when you take two things and mix them together to create a new third thing, that's a combination. A lot of food preparation is involved with combining different types of food to make other things. Typical spaghetti sauce might be a combination of tomatoes and salt and some meat and some herbs and things, and you combine all that with a bit of water, and voila, with a little bit of heat, you have a delicious spaghetti sauce. So here we have a combination to preserve food, a combination of low moisture, little water content, and little air to bring in bacteria and other things. And this creates an environment, or this creates a situation where the bacteria and the mold, the things that can rot the food, well, they will struggle to survive. As we said earlier, it's the same reason you wrap things in plastic or wrap them up in a bag, put them in the fridge, keep them at a low temperature in a dry environment. All of that stuff will keep the food fresher for longer. So what happens? The result is that a properly stored jar of honey can stay safe and delicious for years, which makes honey one of the world's longest lasting natural treats. Well-preserved honey or well-stored honey can last a very long time. I think I've even read about scientists in Egypt finding jars of honey that the Egyptians used, and there is actually still sweet honey down at the bottom. I'm not sure if anyone tasted it, but they did test it, and it was relatively fresh, even though it was thousands of years old.
Interesting. Okay, so of course honey is a wonder food, and of course you can spread it on toast and eat it in different ways. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Here comes our Chinese teacher, Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第2部分提到，蜂蜜是由蜜蜂从花蜜制成的，花蜜含水量高，因此容易腐坏。文中是在花蜜 flower nectar 后面接了逗号 which is high in water 来补充说明它含水量高。我们在表达食物当中有某种成分的含量多寡时，可以用到 high、rich 或是 low 来表达。那 be high in something 或是 be rich in something 就是富含什么点点点的含量高， be low in something 则是指什么什么的含量低。举例来说， Most vegetables are high in fiber and low in calories 大部分的蔬菜都富含纤维质，而且热量低。补充一下，有时候可能会看到名词连字号加上 rich 来构成复合形容词，表达富含什么什么的。像 protein rich 就是富含蛋白质的， mineral rich 富含矿物质的，还有 nutrient rich 就是富含营养物质的，营养丰富的等等。课文接着提到，一旦花蜜进入蜂巢，蜜蜂就会用翅膀扇动花蜜，使其大量的水分蒸发。当这个过程完成时，水分含量就已经从大约 80% 下降到只有 15%。文中是用 by the time the process is complete 来表达当这个过程完成时。by the time 是用来引导时间副词子句，表达说到什么什么的时候，到点点点时间之前。By the time 主词加动词，可以把它摆在主要子句之前或者是之后，用来描述在那个时间点之前的状态，或者是已经发生的事。那这可以指过去或未来的情况。我们先来看看指过去情况时 by the time 之后是要接过去式。那主要子句可以用到过去简单式或是过去完成式 had 加 pp 来强调动作已发生或完成。好，这边造2个例句。By the time we got there, there were no more seats left. 我们到的时候已经没有空位了。那主要子句是用过去简单式。By the time we got there, the show had already begun. 我们到的时候，表演已经开始了。那主要子句就是用到过去完成式 had 加上 pp。再来看指未来情况时 by the time 之后要接现在式，那么主要子句可以用到未来式或者是未来完成式 will have 加上 pp 去表达。那一样造2个例句。By the time you arrive, we will be gone. 等到你抵达时，我们就已经离开了。那主要子句是用未来简单式。By the time you come back, I will have finished my homework. 等你回来时，我就已经写完回家作业了。那这边主要子句则是用到未来完成式 will have 加上 pp。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Organism. An organism's environment will significantly affect how it grows and behaves. Oxygen. When the brain doesn't get a sufficient amount of oxygen, it is unable to function properly. Hive. Several bees flew out of the hive and into the garden in search of flowers. Content. This soda has a high sugar content, so you should avoid drinking too much of it. Preserve. To preserve the fish they had caught, the fishermen smoked it over a fire. Combination. Don's success was due to a combination of talent and hard work.
Discussion Starter starts now.
Time now for the discussion starter. Here's the question. Besides preserving food in jars, what are some other ways that people keep food from spoiling?
I'd say the most common I think of is refrigeration is one method that people use to prevent spoiling. It preserves food by keeping it at a low temperature in a dry environment. And of course, we have both refrigeration that keeps things just above the 0 mark, the freezing mark, and we can also freeze things, right? Frozen fish and things like that can last a very long time.
Well, people also preserve food by simply not having too much of it, okay? If you buy so much food and you need to keep it for a long time, well, it's hard to preserve it if you just buy what you need. You don't have to worry about the food going bad because you've already eaten it. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I am Mike.
See you next time.